morning. This is Richard Solomon. Welcome to Taking Care of Business on WCWP 88.1 FM. And once again, we're not broadcasting live from the Abrams Communication Center. So for those out there who are listening who have an interest in trucks, truck regulation, truck fines, truck summonses, business owners who employ trucks, people who have fleets of trucks, businesses who get fined by the city of New York in truck situations, this is a show for you. In fact, this show will also probably be placed on a podcast on trucksummons.com in the future. But for right now, welcome to 88.1 FM, WCWP, WCWP.org. And I am with retired police officer Nelson Robles, who was with the New York City Police Department for 15 years, 10 of which was with Highway, and he was with the Department of Transportation for 5 years. So this gentleman, who now works with North Shore Investigations and part of the truck inspection group, is a person who is well acquainted with all the truck fines, truck regulations, and the situations like that. As an attorney, I happen to have a whole practice that deals with this. So this is going to be a very interesting interaction because he was the guy that used to write the tickets that many of my clients asked me to defend. So maybe this is sort of like alumni weekend. So for all of the clients out there who have truck fines, pay real attention because we're going to go through all the classics, the overweight, the overlength, off-truck route, the whole bit. We'll get into some explanations. But right now, a phone number. If you have a question related to a truck summons issue and you want to have maybe someone actually look at your fleet, Nelson is the person to talk to. Give him a call at 866-638-9719. Again, our information is 88.1 FM. If you're listening to us on FiOS Channel 45, welcome to the show. This is our continuing series called Taking Care of Business. We are proud to have you as part of our audience. So, all right, officer. This is like old home week.
It is.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about this. So the truck regulation. There's tons of truck regulations out there.
There are really more truck regulations than people either want to know about or could possibly even imagine, and they come from a wide variety of parts of the city and the state of New York.
Right. Well, there's city regulations, there's state regulations, there's federal regulations. And there's regulations based on like the size of your truck and what you're carrying and where you're going.
That's correct.
So let's start. So where can you find the city regulations? Where are they? Where are the city truck regulations located?
For the city of New York, all of the truck regulations that you would need are primarily going to be found in the New York City traffic rules and regulations.
Okay. That's the city. Now, the state has its own set of rules.
That would be the New York State Vehicle and Traffic Law.
Known as the VTL.
Known as the VTL, that's right.
Okay, because if you're in traffic court, you hear the VTL mentioned a lot, so Vehicle Traffic Law. So that's state regulations.
Correct.
Then there's the federal stuff.
And that comes out of the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations, and that's Series 390 through 396, and there are probably a few others.
Right. I know there's some environmental regulations dealing with truck smoke emissions
and spilling of
liquids.
Of liquids,
yes. And those are bad fines.
They can be.
Yeah, those are very bad fines.
They can be very hefty.
Yeah. If you have a fine related to a truck summons, I understand you can end up in one of two places. You can end up either in one of the criminal courts locally or the Traffic Violations Bureau, which is a administrative hearing unit of the Department of Motor Vehicles.
That is correct.
Okay. What determines why do some tickets go to Traffic Violations Bureau and others go to, say, either 346 Broadway or 120 Skimmerhorn Street or Targhee Street in Staten Island or 120-55 Queens Boulevard?
The easiest way to answer that question is it really depends on the violation. Some violations, just by their very nature, are designed by the state of New York to be unclassified misdemeanors and therefore have to be heard in a criminal court.
Okay.
And then other violations can just go to traffic court. And then there's a third section where it can be either one. It's really at the discrepancy of the officer.
In my opinion, I'd rather go to the criminal court.
Yes, in the criminal court, most trucking companies are going to get a far better deal
outcome
than they will in traffic court. Traffic court is traffic court, and it is what it is in the book.
Right.
And if the testimony matches what's in the book, your fines can be pretty substantial.
So let's talk about the different kinds of fines? I guess there's equipment related,
Correct.
and then there's things regarding size and dimension.
Correct.
I know there's something like overweight without a permit, overwidth without a permit.
That's correct.
What are the rules about? I mean, basically, what are the rules about size of your truck and weight and things like that?
When it comes to weight, primarily the City of New York mirrors what the state regulations are, except for one, and that's for the maximum gross weight of a vehicle. The City of New York is old. It's about 400 plus years.
And it looks it.
In some parts it does. But the City of New York, because of a rule that's in the state rules, the state regulation, state VTL, where it says that a city having a population in excess of 1 million and not wholly incorporated within one county has the right to make its own rules. And for the most part, the city's overweight limits match what the state is. So on a single axle, you're only allowed to be 22,400. On a tandem axle, you're allowed 36,000. But on the gross weight for the state of New York, the maximum gross without a permit is 80,000. In the city of New York, 73,280 pounds.
Wow, not an ounce over.
And not an ounce over. And that's simply because of the infrastructure of the city.
Now, I remember from some of the traffic violation trials that I've done on behalf of clients, there's something called the bridge formula, because there's something...
Sure.
And it's a very complicated formula.
It's actually not that complicated. If you look at it on paper, you would think that you would need a slide rule, but there's actually an easy way to do it.
Oh, so what is the bridge formula, and what does that mean to motorists?
The bridge formula actually circumvents both the city rules and the state rules, because it allows for less weight. It's actually based upon the configuration of the truck. The easiest way to do it, picture a truck, look at the front wheel and look at the backmost wheel. You give the front wheel, and you're going to consider that one axle, you give that 17,000 pounds. You go to the rearmost wheel and think of that as one axle, and you give that 17,000 pounds.
Okay, so I got 34,000 pounds.
You got 34,000 pounds minimum. You then give the truck an allowable weight of 1,000 pounds per foot in between the two wheels. So if between axle number 1 and let's say axle number 3 is 20 feet,
get 20,000 pounds.
You get 20,000 pounds. So you add the 20,000 to the 34, and if you went across a bridge, then you cannot carry more than 54,000 pounds.
Even if you have a registration weight that allows for something higher.
That is correct.
And of course, you kind of have to cross bridges
and
to get around.
And there's almost, with the exception of coming from Jersey, unless you come through over unless you come through the tunnels, you have to cross a bridge.
Now, the bridge formula doesn't apply to tunnels.
No, it does not.
Okay. And what kind of bridges, like, does the bridge formula work for? Is it
any bridge?
Even like the Queensboro Bridge?
Any bridge.
Wow. Okay. Now, a lot of people don't know about that.
No, they don't.
Yeah, okay. There's another thing called off-truck route. That's something I personally see a lot of off-truck route tickets.
Okay.
Invariably, when I get a phone call, I get a fax of something that's very hard to read because the tickets don't fax that well. But invariably, it is a ticket that says just literally 3 words: off-truck route.
Correct.
And let's talk about that.
Each borough in the city of New York has defined roads where commercial vehicles, specifically trucks, are allowed to travel as they're going through that particular borough. There's also something called local truck routes. So, for example, let's take the borough of Queens. Astoria Boulevard is both a local truck route and a through truck route because you can traverse it to get to the Brooklyn-Queens Expressway as you can head into Brooklyn. But you can also use it to access Steinway Street so that you could go to Steinway Street and make a delivery. Steinway Street being a local because it's only in that it only travels within that borough. A through truck route is something that's going to permit you to travel from one borough to another. Flatbush Avenue in Brooklyn, Broadway in Manhattan, the Grand Concourse up in the Bronx, Highland Boulevard in Staten Island. These wide thoroughfares with commercial businesses on both sides are more than likely going to be a through truck route, a route that a truck could travel to utilize to go through the borough. And then there are other streets where they're only allowed to as they're making a local delivery.
So what are all these rules about local delivery, and what do local deliveries? They include pickups and drop-offs. Does it include service? Talk about all this.
Well, a local delivery either means the vehicle itself is coming to make a delivery or it's going to make a pickup, and the way that the law is written is kind of vague. It doesn't allow for somebody from out of state coming to pick up some of your merchandise or drop off your merchandise. It says that a person is allowed to come off of the local truck route to make a delivery at the closest point to its destination. Well, if you're from Jersey, how are you going to know when you're going into Brooklyn that this is only going to allow me to go this far and then I have to turn off? You wouldn't know. And unfortunately, a lot of people, a lot of truck drivers get caught in this. The easiest way to do it is if it's a residential block, you probably don't belong there.
Okay. Now, I know that New York City has both downloadable maps, and you go to the DMV and actually get a physical map of the truck routes.
Sure.
The problem I think I've learned in my practice of law dealing with truck regulation is that most of the drivers don't bother to get the maps, and I guess it's somewhat difficult to drive with the map in your lap as you drive around. But what are the tips and strategies out there for potential drivers out there to avoid these kinds of tickets?
My recommendation would be to contact the New York City Department of Transportation. They will offer you a free map of what route you can take with the type of vehicle that you're driving. The second tip I would offer, realistically, would be, depending on the size of the company, would be to buy a copy of the New York City traffic rules. It will tell you exactly what's a through truck route, what's a local truck route, what are the special routes that you can take when traveling in Manhattan, because there are certain areas of Manhattan that you're not allowed in during certain times, and then make photocopies of it and give it out to the remainder of your co-drivers. It would save you. Once upon a time, truck route summonses used to be just a fine. Now it's a fine and 2 points.
And I think as you get more tickets, I think the fine goes up.
It does.
I think it's like $250 and 2 points for the first, and then it's like $500 for the second, and still 2 points.
That's correct.
What is the impact of points on your commercial driver's license? First of all, what kind of license do you need if you're driving a truck? What point do you need? I guess there's the regular driver's license that we all have in our cars, and then there's something that you need that's a little higher for things like trucks.
Once upon a time, the city of New York, or actually the state of New York, had a wide variety of restrictions about driving motor vehicles. You could have a Class D license, which only allowed you to drive a vehicle up to 18,000 pounds, but then you had an E, which allowed you up to 26. They've since done away with it, and they now allow everybody with a regular license to drive up to 25,999 pounds. Then you can drive a regular truck that's registered for 25,999 with a regular license. So that allows John Q. Public to go to Ryder or Penske, U-Haul, and get one of the larger size trucks and not need a commercial driver's license. However, once you hit 26,000 pounds, you must have a commercial driver's license.
Okay. And then what do you need for a commercial driver's license? You got to go to special school?
You have to do the road test all over again, only you have to do it in the type of vehicle that you're going to be driving. So if you're going to drive a bus, you need to take your test in a bus, and you would get a Class B license at the minimum, and then you would need an endorsement just to drive a bus.
Oh, wow.
But if you're going to drive a regular truck, then just the B by itself, as long as it doesn't carry hazardous materials or you're carrying passengers, then just a B by itself is good enough.
Air brakes. I remember being in court sometimes, and they say that if the vehicle has air brakes, regardless of size, you need a commercial driver's license?
Believe it or not, I've never understood that whole thing, and from my training, it was based upon weight. Air brakes had nothing to do with it. So it's that magical number of 26,000 pounds. Then that's when you needed a CDL.
So basically, if I have a truck that's a little over, I have to start pulling things off and getting rid of the spare tire.
Well, believe it or not, there's a very little known part of the vehicle and traffic law that if you're found to be overweight, the officer has the right, if they choose to make you offload.
Is that right?
If it's in Section 385 of the vehicle and traffic law, somewhere in one of the upper subdivisions, it has the right. You have the officer has the right to make you offload.
But then you could be littering because I guess
no, it wouldn't be a littering thing, but you would be responsible for guarding your own stuff until it got picked up.
Wow. So, or you have to maybe call dispatch, get another vehicle, and bring the offload. Quick station identification. You are listening to Taking Care of Business. Richard Solomon with retired police officer Nelson Robles, who is with North Shore Investigations, 866-638-9719, NorthShoreInvestigations.com. This is your host, Richard Solomon. You may want to check out our future truck summons site. It may actually be up and running by the time you hear this, trucksummons.com. So this is a topic that's near and dear to me. The phone number for trucksummons.com for legal representation in the boroughs of Brooklyn, Queens, Manhattan, and the Bronx for criminal court only is 516-239-3090. So that's the number for that. And, of course, if you are a fleet owner and you like your trucks checked out, I think you need to give Nelson a call because it's amazing when you take a very experienced person like Mr. Robles here and you walk through a yard and you look at trucks, and it's just amazing the little things that you can see, whether it's the light, the tread, mud flaps.
There's too many. Trucks have too many working parts, and there's a section of law to cover just about every single working part.
And I believe that's what VTL 120.
No, VTL starts in section 375,
which is the one on all the equipment violations.
You're talking about 140.2 of the New York State Transportation Law.
Yeah, that's it. That's on the giant list.
Actually, that's not even a giant list. What happens is we were talking about city rules, state rules, and federal rules.
Right.
And as a police officer or a traffic agent for the city of New York, you're not empowered to write federal tickets directly utilizing the federal code. You're just not allowed to. You have to be a sworn federal officer. The way that they work around that is the federal codes have been adopted by a state law, the New York State Transportation Law. And in order to do that, you have to write 140.2 of the New York State Transportation Law. You then refer to Section 800 and of the New York Code of Rules and Regulations, and then you connect it to, it's almost like connect the dots. So it's 140.2 and then 800 something of the New York Code of Rules and Regulations, and then either Section 390 through 396 of the Federal Motor Carrier Rules. And that's where you get everybody. And it's just a generic 140.2, and it doesn't matter if it's for mud flaps or for missing a lug nut or for defective tire, glass, mirrors. It's all 140.2.
What are the common equipment things that you see? I know that I've seen the things involving fire extinguishers.
That's one of the required pieces of equipment that has to be inside the motor vehicle. Sure.
Right. I've seen things with fire extinguishers. I've seen things with mud flaps.
Sure.
I've seen things with brake lights.
Sure.
I've seen things with the tread of tire.
Sure.
What else are the more common types of things?
The emergency triangles that every truck is required to carry.
Okay. I haven't seen that many of that. Okay.
Fire extinguisher triangles, mud flaps, which is actually known as a splash guard. Okay. That's the actual technical term of it.
Okay.
The tread of tire, lights always, the glass, either the mirrors or the windshield itself.
And what's the rule on that?
It's not supposed to distort your visibility.
Okay.
So a small crack at the base of your windshield won't get noticed, but if you've got a star with some spider webbing right in the middle and you have to kind of lean to the side to drive, you're going to have a problem. But the general rule is it has to distort your visibility. Okay.
What about tinted windows? I've seen some tickets for that.
Tinted windows is a New York State rule under the vehicle and traffic law. And it wasn't one of my strong points. You're only allowed to have a certain amount of tint. I believe 70% is the limit. So you have to have 70% light transmittal through your windows unless you have a medical documentation indicating that your windows can be tinted further.
how will people know what their tinting is? And I mean, a lot of times drivers or truck drivers come to me and they say, I bought the car from a dealer and I figured everything was okay. So if you have tinted windows, what should and you're not under any ticket situation, what do you do? Who do you go to actually see if you're legit or not?
I don't even think that there's a place that you could go. You'd have to find somebody with an actual tint meter in order to test the exact amount of light transmittal going through your windows.
Wow. So, what other kinds of things that you see that are very common and all of these are ones that are like really preventable?
Oh, sure. A lot of this is driver maintenance, driver error, or it's simply in some cases it's company neglect. The drivers take the time out to tell the company, "Hey, listen, I have this wrong," and unfortunately, I hate to have to say it, but there are a great many companies that tell their drivers, well, you can either drive the truck or you can go home.
Okay, so there's a little bit of pressure. Dude, I remember reading somewhere that drivers have to conduct like a daily inspection.
That's correct.
What is the rule on that, and what are they required to inspect, and how are they supposed to memorialize all that? How does that all work?
If you drive a vehicle that requires you to have a commercial driver's license, so anything at 26,000 pounds, 26,001 and over, you're required to do a daily walk around at the beginning before you start driving your shift.
Okay.
You should check your tires make sure that you have sufficient tire pressure, that they're not flat. You should make sure that you have all of your lug nuts. You should make sure that your headlights work, your turn signals work, your brake lights work, your reverse lights work, that your mirrors are in good condition and they're not broken or missing, that your windshield is intact, that your steering wheel, when you turn the steering wheel, that you don't turn the wheel over 3 times before the front wheel finally turns.
Is that too much play?
It's way too much play. And believe it or not, there's actually a rule about how much play a steering wheel can have.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, there is. You have to measure it. It's insane. You have to have a fire extinguisher. You have to have your triangles.
Now, what kind of fire extinguisher are you supposed to have?
It depends on the size of your truck.
Okay.
It's written into the federal law what type of fire extinguisher you need. It's under Section 393.95 actually, and it'll tell you exactly what you need. I think it's either a 4 or a 10 rating. It'll tell you what you need.
Right, and then obviously, if you have a fire extinguisher, you have to have the charge looked at so often.
Well, it has to be charged. It can't be empty.
No, but it has to. But it can be charged in year 1. But then when is the inspection up? Or
that's a question that's probably better geared for someone who's familiar with the fire safety rules.
Okay.
Because they're for the average police officer, traffic agent, or highway patrol officer, you're going to look at the fire extinguisher. Is it empty? Is it charged? Is it overcharged?
Oh, because there's that little meter.
There's the gauge on the side. As long as it's not empty, I'm satisfied.
You're cool. Okay.
I'm certainly not going to pull the pin out and see whether or not it works. I just want to see that you have one and that it's not empty.
All right. So going through the daily inspection, what else? Continuing from the fire extinguisher, what else?
The 3 triangles. In the event that you break down, you're required to have 3 triangles so that you can set them up behind you. And then it's just the basic stuff on your vehicle. Make sure that your tires are fully inflated, that there's no visual cuts in the tire, that there's no visual bulges in the tire, indicating some type of deformity and could possibly result in blowout. You want to make sure that all your lights work. You want to make sure your horn works, your mirrors, your glass, and anything that you would need for the vehicle. For example, if you're hauling dirt, make sure that the tarp that you have doesn't have holes in it.
Okay, that makes sense.
Make sure that the door that holds the material in let's say, for example, on a dump truck, make sure that door is properly secured, that the locking mechanism is intact, that it's not missing the pieces, that it's not being held together by baling wire.
Okay, so that goes to a couple of fines I see all the time, which is uncovered load, unsecured load,
sure,
and unsecured. I was amazed. I've seen people driving with like wheelbarrow, like on the road, just on the road. You'll see someone like with a wheelbarrow in the back of a flatbed, and it's not even really anchored down by anything other than maybe like a little chicken wire, just or a kite rope, just something. Kite string.
By the federal standards, you have to be locked down either with synthetic webbing or chains.
Okay. So let's wait. So what's the rule on loads and covering loads?
If you carry a cargo that's loose that can spill out gravel, dirt, even asphalt to some extent, that has to be covered with a tarp so that it cannot come out over the water line and either land on the roadway or land on a vehicle behind it.
Oh, I've been behind trucks where I've had that.
I have too.
Yeah. Especially gravel.
Sure.
It's like raining gravel. It's like, whoa.
Sure. You have to make sure that your lift gate is secured and holds the gravel in. And then with regular loads, anything that can shift off of a truck, for example, on an open-sided, flatbedded truck, has to be secured to the truck bed, either by chain or by what they call synthetic webbing.
Okay. So what is synthetic webbing? It sounds like Spider-Man stuff.
Think of a really thick belt, and you will see it gets strapped over the material, and it gets cranked until it's locked down on both sides of the vehicle. And that synthetic webbing, depending on how wide it is rated to hold down a certain amount of weight.
Okay. So now I understand that an unsecured load is a very serious traffic violation.
It's a potential hazard.
Now, is that a felony?
No, these are all unclassified misdemeanors.
Okay.
Depending on how the officer chooses to write it, he can either write Section 380A of the Vehicle and Traffic Law, which is just a traffic summons, or he can write Section 140.2 of the Transportation Law, work it up into Section 393-100 of the Federal Motor Carrier, and now you're in for, at the bare minimum, $150 fine.
Right. And
you can place you out of service if you don't have the necessary equipment to lock that material down.
Let's talk about that. That's
Sure.
very interesting. I've seen people come to my office, and I will see something that says out of service violation, and I've learned that that's something that's really bad. By the way, we have like a minute and a half before the break, but the first break. So let's talk about out of service violations.
Out of service violations is something that is so patently unsafe on the truck that the truck poses not only a danger to the people in and around the truck, but it also poses a hazard to the driver of the vehicle itself. It's something that can potentially cause an accident with either injury or death. Something that's just so grossly defective that it poses a serious problem to the motoring public.
I've actually seen at truck stops, trucks pulled away by tow trucks. Is that pretty much the sign that that's an out of service?
That's pretty much the sign. Brakes, unsecured load with no means of securing it. The driver's not qualified to drive that particular type of truck.
I've seen those kind of cases too, where you have someone who didn't have the right kind of license, and there was like an emergency, and they thought they could drive it, and apparently you can't, and leads to all kinds of issues.
It does.
Yeah. Have you seen situations where drivers have been arrested because of a truck pullover?
Not generally because of the truck. Those are very rare. But I've seen people who are driving trucks and are charged with DWI, charged with suspended license violations. Yes.
All right. We'll be back in a minute. This is Richard Solomon, WCWP.org.
Hundreds of adoptable animals are looking for loving homes. If you're looking for a canine or kitty companion, Little Shelter Animal Rescue and Adoption Center's 14th annual Petapalooza is a great place to start your search. Join Little Shelter on Saturday, August 20th and Sunday the 21st for fun-filled weekend that will include food, entertainment, and contests. You could meet your new best friend at Little Shelter's Petapalooza 2011. That's at 33 Warner Road, Huntington, New York. For more information, call 631-368-8770. This community calendar is a public service from your friends at 88.1 FM and WCWP.org.
Mornings on 88.1 WCWP just got better. Tune in to 88.1 weekdays at 9 a.m. for the best in AAA music. John Mayer, Dave Matthews Band, Sarah Bareilles, and names you've never even heard of. We play the stuff you can't hear anywhere else.
I said I wish that we could stay here. but I fear our time has come.
Just turn up the radio and chill out. See? Your mornings just got better. 88.1 WCWP.
All right, welcome back to Taking Care of Business. This is our show on truck fines, truck regulations, truck summonses, sponsored, I guess, in part by trucksummons.com, 516-239-3090. And, of course, our guest is Nelson Robles of North Shore Investigations and their truck inspection practice. And before the break, 29 minutes after the hour, we were talking about some serious problems with truck drivers and being arrested, and the topic of DWI came up. So let's address a little bit of that, officer. We had a situation where we were talking about really that there's not a lot of things you could be arrested for because of the equipment per se. You could have your truck taken out of service, but there are very few things that would actually lead to your incarceration.
Right. An officer would have to be able to prove or have really good suspicion that you knew that there was something wrong with the vehicle, or your vehicle was carrying something that it shouldn't have been. It's a hard stretch. Okay.
But you were talking a little bit before the break about DWI.
Yes.
And you've seen that in your practice as a patrolman?
It's rare because most drivers value their licenses as if they were made of gold. But there are occasions where I've seen people driving commercial vehicles and they're either under the influence of alcohol or they're under the influence of drugs, and sometimes both, and it's bad. I can think of one example where I stopped a gentleman for traveling off the truck route, driving down Fifth Avenue in Manhattan at probably about 9 or 10 in the morning. He was driving a small truck.
Like a van?
Just a little bit, nothing that required a commercial driver's license, but it's still defined as a truck. And he blew a 28 at like 9 or something in the morning. He had been out at a bachelor party or a baby shower the night before and freely admitted to me that he had been drinking vodka. Wow. And here he is driving a vehicle that's anywhere between 15 and 20,000 pounds that early in the morning on Fifth Avenue.
Wow, that's a problem. That's a problem. So, obviously, you should never be drinking and driving, especially buses, trucks, and things like that. One thing that we didn't talk about is if you have a commercial truck, you're supposed to have certain lettering and signs and DOT numbers. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's some of the administrative regulations that are imposed upon companies. You have to, and it's actually not in the state law. It's in the city law, and it's in the federal rules. You have to have lettering naming the name of the company or the person that's operating the vehicle. And the lettering, believe it or not, has to be 3 inches in height and in color contrast to the color of the vehicle.
So you can't have like red on red, for example?
No.
Okay.
And the DOT number, depending on the size and the weight of the vehicle, you are required to register with the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Agency and register your vehicle, and they will give you a specific number that's dedicated solely to your company. It's kind of like another registration.
I guess it's like another tax ID in a way.
It is.
Oh, yeah, speaking of tax, I forgot. There's the motor vehicle tax, there's IFTA. Let's talk about
right. Sure.
Oh, I'll tell you, this show just brings out all kinds of memories. So wait, what is the motor vehicle tax?
The motor vehicle tax is any vehicle, well, there's two different ways to describe it. If your vehicle is primarily doing business in the city of New York, or is let me rephrase that. If your commercial vehicle is registered in the city of New York, you must pay the motor vehicle tax, and it is automatically incorporated in your registration if your vehicle is registered anywhere between 0 and 10,000 pounds. Anything after that, and you have to register with the Department of Finance, and you get a small stamp called a tax stamp. Goes right in the windshield. And it's just another tax for commercial vehicles. Runs anywhere between $40 and $300, depending on the size of your vehicle. The IFTA, it's actually an acronym. It stands for International Fuel Tax Agreement. And the HUT, which stands for Highway Use Tax Permit.
I remember the HUT violations, yeah.
They all come out from the New York State Department of Taxation and Finance, the New York State tax law. And it's just another way for a trucking company over 18,000 pounds to be regulated and monitored by another state agency in this particular instance.
Okay. Now, what's interesting is when we talked about the signage, DOT, MVT, IFTA, I forget. There's also another. Isn't there a diesel inspection sticker? There are the regular inspection stickers that you can see on your average motor vehicle, and then there are what's called heavy-duty inspection stickers, which incorporate emissions. If the vehicle is registered in New York, it must, and it's over 18,000 pounds, has to have both. Has to have a regular inspection sticker up in the window, and it has to have the heavy-duty inspection sticker on the bumper somewhere. You know, with all these regulations, where is there a place other than maybe talking to an expert like yourself where you can kind of is there a cliff note for this, or is there like truck inspections for dummies?
Nah, you know what? That might be another.
Maybe that's a side project.
It might be a side project. In theory, realistically, for probably, I'd say probably for $20. You could buy a copy of the New York City traffic rules, which is about $9.95 the last time I checked.
Okay.
$1.50 for the New York State Vehicle and Traffic Law, and say $5.95, I think, for the Federal Motor Carrier Rules, the condensed guide that applies to truck drivers. So say $20 plus shipping and handling, and you've got 3 of the major sources of rules that pertain to trucks and commercial vehicles. And the other stuff you can get offline.
Right.
You can get Section 1815 of the New York State Tax Law offline. You can get Section 10-127 of the Administrative Code, which deals with lettering. You can get Section 11-809 of the New York City Administrative Code off of online. And you can just print it out. And you can make yourself your own little binder and just follow the rules. Some of the stuff is not really complicated to understand. This is what you need if you weigh 10,000 pounds. This is what you need if you weigh over 10,000 pounds, over 18,000, over 26,000. It's all in black and white. Might you need someone to help you to decipher it? Maybe. Some of the stuff is actually kind of cut and dry.
Okay. All right, so continuing this rapid pace education about truck fines regulations for those out there. And again, if you have a legal issue, you can always go to trucksummons.com, 516-239-3090, for criminal appearances in Brooklyn, Queens, Manhattan, or the Bronx, truck regulation. And, of course, for truck inspection issues and things like that, what you want to learn, you contact North Shore Investigations. Ask for our friend Nelson here, and he is at 866-638-9719. And we'll post all this on various places as well in case you're listening in the car or you just don't have a pen handy. An issue I see as a lawyer every once in a while is somebody has the insurance lapsed. The insurance lapsed. That means the registration then lapsed. And all of a sudden the vehicle is pulled over, and then there becomes a tremendous problem with the police and maybe getting arrested or not, or the truck definitely being out of service and maybe have to be towed. Let's talk a little bit about that, because a lot of people don't realize the dynamics of that, and sometimes the drivers are incredibly surprised.
Yes.
Because they're not the people in the accounting office or
Correct.
paying the bills or things like that. From the perspective that you have, tell us a little bit about.
Unfortunately, because a lot of large companies, they maintain so many vehicles. Sometimes there's an issue with the insurance. They change insurance companies mid-policy, and the electronic notification doesn't get to the Department of Motor Vehicles. So the Department of Motor Vehicles immediately suspends not one, but all registrations associated with that company. So now here you are as John Q, truck driver. You do your morning inspection, and you've got the right license, and you've checked your load, and everything is good, and off you go, and you're coming through the city of New York, and you come across the Triborough, actually the Robert F. Kennedy Bridge. And
I'll always call it the Triborough.
Yeah, I will too. I'm a city kid myself. But all of a sudden, you're being flagged over for whatever reason. Could be because you're the 5th truck. It could be because the officer sees something that warrants a further investigation. Now they ask you for your license, they ask you for the registration, they conduct a computer check of the registration, and the registration comes up suspended. insurance lapse.
Oopsie. Yeah.
Well, actually, it's not even an oopsie. With the computer systems that they have now, you get a ba-ding. It's a double ping, and every cop goes, "Uh-oh, that's the problem sound." So now you look, and it's registration suspended, insurance lapse, and it'll tell you the date that the insurance got suspended, that the lapse went into effect. So now, in essence, here you are, unknowing, driving a vehicle that's, in theory, has no registration. It's been suspended by the Department of Motor Vehicles.
Right, and of course, on the scene of a pullover, there's not much anybody can do. It's not like there's a fax machine in your vehicle, and then somebody can maybe fax you the latest thing that may have come in the mail that morning, or the check that went out that day.
You're now all of a sudden the driver gets caught in the middle. The driver is now caught between the officer who has found an alleged violation and the company who didn't provide him with the safety net while he's driving the vehicle. So now he gets on the phone with the company, and the company now wants to talk to the officer, and the officer may or may not take that call. They may or may not want to speak to the person. They're going to listen. You answer that in court.
Right, which is where the whole legal team has to come in. So, yeah, that's where we get a call on that. Let's on a similar topic, let's talk a little bit about outstanding warrants. That seems to be a big problem, because I've had people call me up. What happened to Joe? Oh, you won't believe this. He was driving. He got pulled over. There was a warrant. They took him. We haven't seen him. He made a call. He told Mikey, and then I get a call as the lawyer. And of course, a lot of this was one of these things where, what happened? We don't know. Oh, we heard there was a warrant outstanding. Let's talk a little bit about that.
That unfortunately happens more often than not, and it more often than not happens with drivers from other states, because they come into New York, and because New York has so many rules and so many different laws that in other places and other jurisdictions are not necessarily an infraction. Unfortunately, some of the infractions here require a personal appearance by the driver in court. Unfortunately, some drivers don't know this. So they come in, and there's a normal course of business. They hand their invoice or their daily truck sheet or their delivery slips with the ticket to the office personnel. And, oh, I got this. It's almost like it's a parking ticket. And then what happens is they pass it along, and it never gets answered. Now John Q. John, you're going to take this load into the city. And John goes behind the wheel of his truck, and he starts driving into Manhattan. And let's say he makes a turn at a location that he's not supposed to. Let's say 42nd Street and 5th Avenue, a prime location. Big intersection. And you're not allowed to turn there unless you're a bus. And here he comes, and he makes a turn because he's got to make a delivery on 5th Avenue. And he turns onto 5th Avenue, he gets pulled over, and he hands the officer, let's say, for example, his New Jersey or his Connecticut or his Pennsylvania license. And the officer, if they're really thorough, not only runs that license in that home state, but runs that individual by name and date of birth in the state of New York. And all of a sudden, you get the ding, and all of a sudden, it's open warrant, and there'll be a docket number, and you'll have to call and find out whether or not the warrant's still open and what it's for. And now that delivery just turned into he's actually on his way to criminal court to answer the warrant. He's an involuntary return on a warrant.
Right. Now, I get those calls, and what happens is, just for the people out there listening on 88.1 FM or Fios 45 on WCWP at WCWP.org, what happens is I have to go in as the lawyer and vacate the underlying warrant. And I've had some very interesting situations as a lawyer. One time I actually had a situation where I went to court, and there were like 5 tickets together. 4 were for the company, 1 was for the driver. We asked that there be an adjournment. Judge says, it was the judicial hearing officer, adjournment, they gave a new date. What happened was the court administratively moved the 4 tickets together, and for some reason the driver's ticket just didn't get put in with the pack. It was just one of those things. Wow. So I guess it seems like the system's a little bit better now because they have barcode scanning,
yes, they do.
which it seems to be a way to avoid that. But somehow, I guess when they rubber band the tickets and when they put it in the pile, there was like one that was loose, and I guess they assumed that was a no appearance, even though in those days they had court reporters, but now they don't have court reporters anymore because of the budget cuts. But anyway, we had to go to court and explain that somehow the one ticket got loose, and that we were there for the adjournment, and why would we appear for 4 and not the 5th? And the court said, yeah, it must have been a mistake, I had to get the underlying warrant issued, vacated, and you had to take it somewhere else, and the whole bit. But it's amazing. Nobody realizes how important the little details can actually be, especially in the office. Wow, we don't have that much time. So one thing I just want to tell people that every corporation has to have an attorney. People don't know this. A lot of times they go to court, they bring all their proof. And it's like, what's your name? Well, my name's Joe. Well, Joe, you work for the Joe Corporation. We don't need you. We need the attorney that represents the corporation, and they'll give them a slip and says, come back another day. Let's talk a little bit about, because we don't have that much time, the dynamics of a truck pullover. Let's say there's, you're with the DOT, you're maybe, let's say, at the Astoria Boulevard by the Triborough Bridge or something close to that. You set up an inspection, and all of a sudden every third truck gets pulled over. How does all that work?
Oh, there's a bunch of different ways that checkpoints can be conducted. There has to be a randomness, so to speak, or an obvious violation. Now, unfortunately, there are many businesses which are automatically suspect. Haulers of construction materials, gravel, dirt, concrete, asphalt, notoriously heavy, rock salt, gasoline. Then there were other heavy, trucks that haul heavy machinery. They're suspect. Garbage haulers, the private sanitation trucks. Those types of vehicles they get paid by how much they transport. And not to say that all companies are out for the almighty dollar, but the truth is, if they can get away with it and go 10,000 pounds over, they will, because they get paid for it. And those chartered trucks are the ones that you look at. Now, can you see a truck that's kind of tilted back? It's kind of popping a wheelie, as they used to call it, because he's loaded too much? Sure. Can you take a guess that a truck with a large mound of dirt over the waterline might have a weight issue? Sure. But theoretically, it's supposed to be either every 5th truck, every 3rd truck, every other truck, or you see a violation. You see, for example, this year's inspection stickers are yellow. Last year's were gray. So if you see a truck coming down, he's got a gray inspection sticker, there's your probable cause to conduct a truck stop.
Okay.
No inspection sticker. No front plate. There are certain things that are automatically jump out at you as an officer, especially with a lot of experience, and you'll be able to tell.
All right, so the truck gets brought over for whatever reason. What does the station look like? What's there? I know there's like scales and this and that and tape measuring.
It depends on the type of checkpoint that you're going to set up, but primarily you're probably going to have a set of scales, either completely portable 50-pound scales, or you're going to have the semi-portable, the ones that are brought out on a trailer, and they look like 2 long pieces of metal. And as the truck comes in, you'll approach the driver, you'll inform the driver what's going on, you'll ask for license and registration, a bill of lading, which is another piece of paper that everybody's required to have in the city of New York. And you'll get those documents, and then maybe the bill of lading tells you how much the person is carrying. And this is where experience comes in. For example, you tell me you're carrying 24 yards of concrete, I'm really going to be interested to see how much you are on the scale, because that's a lot of concrete, as opposed to I'm only carrying 5. You're traveling and you're hauling a self-propelled crane, and it's up on the truck. Well, the truck plus the crane, you might be a little bit over. We talked about that bridge formula. And now all of a sudden you look and you're registered for, well, wait a minute. Your registration says 120,000 pounds. Where's your permit? And most drivers look at you and go, huh? What permit? And unfortunately, there's a little known law that says you can't be registered for more than the state maximum without a permit,
which is $80,000.
So if you don't have a permit, guess what? And you're registered for 120. Well, there's another summons.
Right, and then that means you're 40,000 over.
Well, it's an administrative violation. I've only written it a few times. Most judges go, "Officer, really?" And you sit there and go, "Listen, he violated the rules. He registered for more. I understand why, but he's supposed to get a permit." And the funny part is that the permit for these types of vehicles run about $100.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Is the permit a daily permit or is it
Depending on which type of permit you're getting, it can either be a daily permit of about $25, unless it's changed in the year since I've been gone. And for the, for example, like for the boom trucks or the self-propelled cranes, it's $100 for the year.
Oh.
It's relatively inexpensive compared to the fines that you could rack up.
Are they hard to obtain?
You have to apply to the New York City Department of Transportation Truck Enforcement Unit, Truck Enforcement Office down on Rector Street, and they're going to ask you for registration. They're going to ask you for your insurance policy, and they're going to ask you for a schematic of your truck. They're going to ask you, well, why do you need this permit? And there are certain types of vehicles that, by manufacturer's design, are already too big.
Okay. So that's all right. It's very interesting. So we only have a few more minutes in this segment, but so what else goes on in the truck inspection?
Well, once you get the license and the registration and the bill of lading, you're going to do a walk around. You're going to look at the tires. You're going to look at the registration sticker, the inspection sticker. Does it have both? Is the registration from out of state? Is the sticker displaying the registration from out of state current? Are the tires flat? Do the tires have enough tread? Is there a cut in the sidewall of the tire? Are they missing hubcaps? Can you see the license plates? Is it spilling cargo? Is it spilling fluid while you're sitting there?
That's got to be embarrassing.
Does the vehicle have a tarp? Is the tarp sufficient? You're going to look at the back of the truck. Is the body of the truck completely enclosed with no holes in the body? You're going to look at the undercarriage of the truck to an extent. You're going to see whether or not the springs are from the brakes, the leaf springs for the suspension, whether or not they're intact. You may ask the driver to turn the wheels. You want to look at the bearings. You want to look at the push rod on the drive axle. You're going to look at the mirrors. You're going to ask him to step on the brakes. You're going to ask him to hit the horn. You're going to ask him to turn on various different lights to see if he's in compliance. Then you're going to have to determine, based upon what the vehicle's carrying, what the vehicle's registered for. You may do the bridge formula. You may just put the person up on the scales. And then, depending on what you find, some of the stuff may go to the driver, and some of the stuff may go to the company. I hate to say it, but if the driver possesses a bad attitude, he could end up with everything.
Yeah. Now, I understand there are there's like a worksheet that the police officers use to...
Some do, some don't. It's not mandatory. Most officers have scrap paper or a little notebook, and as they're walking around, they're listing what the truck is missing.
Now, like, with the weight thing, I've seen in court. There's like this sheet, and it has like axle 1, and it's got the weight, and
that's not a.
It's not mandatory.
That's not mandatory.
It's just like I guess like a convenience.
It's a convenience. It makes it easier to read, and it's something that can be presented in court.
Okay. Wow, we're blazing through here. Quick word on hazardous materials. I assume there's a whole separate section on that.
Hazardous materials is really such a diverse topic. There's so many different things that fall into the category of hazardous materials: gasoline, propane, diesel fuel. And you have to have a certain kind of license. The vehicle has to be marked a certain way. You have to have a fire department inspection. You're only allowed to travel at certain times of the day. You have to have insurance. You have to be marked. You have to have placarding depending on what you're carrying. There's so much with hazardous materials that it's just.
I think also like certain kinds of compressed air, I wouldn't call it, but like things like compressed air, compressed nitrogen.
Well, certainly nitrogen.
Yeah.
Certainly nitrogen has to be marked.
All right, this is Taking Care of Business with Richard Solomon. We're at our the point we have our last mandatory break, so we'll be right back. This is tcbradio.com, 88.1 FM, and if you're listening to us on FiOS 45, welcome to our listening audience. We'll be back to wrap things up in just a minute. Keep it right here. Thanks.
If you've ever thought about becoming a blood donor, Long Island Blood Services offers an easy way to help save lives. On Tuesday, August 23rd, there will be a blood drive held from 3 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. at the Plainview Old Bethpage Public Library. Registration begins on Monday, August 8th, in person or by phone at 516-938-0077, extension 200. The community calendar is a public service from your friends at 88.1 FM and WCWP.org.
Guess who? Hey, it's Christina Kay from Total Access. How are you? Hope you are having an awesome summer. To make it even better, on Tuesdays, we are bringing you nothing but the best music from the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. Early Britney, Little NSYNC, and my personal favorites. Head over to WCWP.org to put your requests in and to learn more. Tuesdays will never be the same. Total Access Turn Back Tuesdays starting July 19th at 5 p.m. Can't wait to see you there.
Do you remember the days of doo-wop, group harmony, rockabilly, rock and roll, girl groups, surf and hot rod, and everything else from the period? Well, it all lives here on Thursdays from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m.
10 o'clock, rock, we're gonna rock around the clock tonight.
Join me, Jet Lightning, for the Groove Yard right here on 88.1 FM and WCWP.org.
Rock, everybody, rock, 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 everybody, rock, 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 everybody. You rock it and you rock it and you rock it around.
All right, we're back. This is Richard Solomon. Thank you for hanging in there for a full hour. For the people out there who are listening, this is a very important part of the law. It's at least part of the practice of the law that I'm somewhat familiar with. And I had the great pleasure and honor to have Officer Robles here to kind of really guide us through what is somewhat complicated, certainly a lot of regulation out there. The impact on businesses all over the place, both in-state, out-of-state, in the city, is actually far-reaching. People don't really realize how much regulation of business is involved with the regulation of trucks. A substantial part of my practice is I was at 346 Broadway this morning, and between going to Queens Boulevard and Targhee Street and Staten Island and the Bronx on 161st Street, not too far from Yankee Stadium, we're there all the time. I tend not to hit Staten Island because it's kind of far, but the rules are pretty much the same in all these jurisdictions, and you definitely need a lawyer if you're a corporation, and you definitely need some expertise. So if you really have a fleet of trucks and you're getting too many fines and you want to cut the problem and nip it in the bud, you don't want a lawyer to help you. You actually want a truck regulation expert. So with that, I recommend Officer Nelson Robles and North Shore Investigations. And I guess the best place to get them is to give them a call on their 800 number, which is 866. So it's toll-free. It's not really an 800 because now there's a lot of things. But it's 866-638-9719. So for further information, go to trucksummons.com for the legal end, NorthshoreInvestigations.com, and 866-638-9719. I really appreciate you being here with us today and taking your time.
My pleasure.
I'm glad that we didn't have to fence in court because I think I would have been eaten alive.
I did all right, but it was always it's really, from the officer's standpoint, you really want to try and make the road safer. And a lot of these companies, they take shortcuts when they don't need to, and very few companies would actually learn from their mistakes, and it was unfortunate.
Well, see, for me, I as a defense lawyer in these things, I always thought that there was a lot of pressure by the city to create a lot of regulation, to create a lot of revenue. But that's the whole process, and it is what it is. But the truth is that safety is paramount. And even as a lawyer, when I talk to clients, I always say, look, let's get beyond the fine. Let's get into both prevention and let's get into safety. Sure. Because what you don't want is you never want to have an accident, and then you find out at the accident that the police issue not only a report, but that there was some kind of truck violation that led to the accident, and then there was all kinds of problems, and that no one needs that.
You don't want to be audited by the federal government either.
Yeah. In fact, when they come knocking, you need to run for cover. Yes.
It can be really, they can shut you down.
Yeah. Okay, this is Richard Solomon. Thanks for listening. We'll see you in a week. NorthshoreInvestigations.com, 866-638-9719. Keep it safe on the roads. We'll see you out there. And if we have to, we'll see you at 346 Broadway. Take care and thanks for listening. See you next week.